90 to 92. The Gerry Ryan Show, Monday to Friday, 9 till 12 on 2FM.
When the Mind Gym, yes, such a thing exists. When the Mind Gym was founded 10 years ago, its aim was to help people change their lives by transforming their thinking habits in the same way that a physical fitness instructor, might transform the way that people exercise. Think Carl Henry in Operation Transformation, except this would be Professor Carl Henry working on your mind and not your abs. In their first two books, the Mind Gym founders, including my next guest, Octavius Black. What a fantastic name, Octavius Black. First invited readers and participants to wake up their minds and manage their time more successfully. Now they have turned their attention to how we can improve our relationships, both personal and professional, by changing the way we think. Octavius, good morning.
Good morning to you, Gerry.
How are you?
Very well indeed. And how are you today, despite the recessionary blues?
Recessionary blues floating around the room like a virus at the moment, and I'm trying to claw my way above it and hoping that I'll bring the audience with me. Now, first of all, congratulations on your name. What a tremendous name, Octavius Black.
I can't take responsibility for it, but I'm certainly enjoying it.
You sound like the next president of the Federation in Star Wars. Now... like many good ideas, the Mind Gym, should I say, began around a dinner table. A very good place to start.
That's right, and we had a glass or two, and we were chatting away about how fashions change over time and how each era has its theme or mode. And our hypothesis was that in the 1980s, it had been the decade of the body. If you remember jogging and Jane Fonda and vegetarianism suddenly becoming mainstream. And we thought, well, if that was the decade of the body, what would the 1990s be? And that was the time when, for the first time ever, people adopted alternative medicine more than conventional medicine. And I don't know if you recall Feng Shui.
Feng Shui, that's right. Make sure that you're facing towards the Bahamas when you're on the toilet, because that's the right thing to do.
Will make you richer and happier and much, much fitter. And that was, if you like, the decade of the spirit or the soul. So we thought, if we have a decade of the body and the decade of the soul, what would the 2000s be? We thought, well, mind, body, soul is an obvious trinity. Mm-hmm. So we thought maybe it would be decade of the mind. And as if to confirm our hypothesis, the number one TV show at the end of the 80s, the decade of the body, was Baywatch.
Yeah.
And the number one TV show at the beginning of the 2000s, the decade we hoped of the mind, was Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? And if you contrast those two, that kind of gave us the confidence that maybe people were moving more towards their minds and a little away from their bodies.
Now, we're all, I think, aware of the fact that some minds are exercised more than others. Some minds are stronger than others. Some minds are weaker than others. But that we can all train our minds. And you can see living proof of that in your everyday life, even without expert assistance. So I think most people, even those who don't use their minds very much, can understand that, yes, you can train a mind. Now, what you have done, though, is to give us something that we can actually grasp onto very readily, and that is the idea that we'll go into a space, albeit virtual, where all the tools and the implements and the training and the expertise and the atmosphere is present to actually train our minds.
That's very right. And what we've tried to do is to make sure that it is grounded in science. So everything we write and contribute is based in psychology. We have 4 professors of psychology who advise us, as well as a team of a dozen psychologists at base who are busy researching and converting insights from research into practical tools. And what we've tried to create is a way of coming back every little so often and retraining, grabbing a new tool or technique and practicing that. So the first chapter in the book is called Do I Have to Read This Book? Because often we get to a big book and oh gosh, can I really cope with all this?
Can I not just sit on it?
Yeah, well, the answer to the question is no, you don't have to read the whole thing. There's a questionnaire at the beginning, and if you fill it in, it'll tell you which chapters you'll enjoy and get benefit from and which chapters not to bother with. So just like going to the gym, which exercises should you do? Maybe some time on the cycling machine, or maybe you should be doing something else to build your abs up. And then the same way for the mind, we're helping people focus their attention on the things that will help them the most.
Now, what you've identified quite correctly is that the way that we relate to one another, the way we relate to our jobs, the way we relate to government, the way that we relate in love, is absolutely pivotal to our mental health and well-being and our progress through this life. And that's why I think that this book actually has a lot to teach us on how to become happy. Because at the end of the day, if these relationships work well, you're not only going to be comfortable, relaxed, but you may even end up being a little wealthier and a little happier and a little more fulfilled.
Absolutely. And at a time like now, that's even more true, where perhaps we've relied on financial things to justify lack of emotional connections with our partners or possibly even with our children, and we can no longer afford those. We're certainly coming across couples who are planning to get divorced, but they can't afford to sell their house, and therefore they're having to live together. And at this time, more than any other time, what we should be looking at is what we can do that doesn't cost any money, but allows us to build relationships and make our lives more fulfilling.
Now, I'm looking up for interrupting you. The right mind, the right frame of mind, I presume that you're relating to there. Now,
absolutely.
This is the I'm okay, you're okay. Now, I recall a pre-marriage course where the priest involved in the course issued this mantra unrelentingly to the point where I wanted to actually stab him to death. And it was spoken in a sort of, I'm okay, you're okay. We're all okay together. And I remember thinking, that is the most redundant, ridiculous phrase that I have ever come across. However, it seems to be at the heart of this chapter here. So convince me.
Okay. I will try and do that. The thought here is that what is it that makes us decide whether we're able to have good relationships? And we often blame it on the other person.
Yeah.
She wasn't right, or he didn't look after me, or whatever it happens to be. My boss was horrible, my clients are miserable, and so on and so forth. But actually, the cause of great relationships is where we're at ourselves, how we look at ourselves, how we think about ourselves, and how we think about other people. So if we think we're basically a good person, we're feeling pretty confident about that, and that we are happy with what we stand for and who we are, then that puts us in a much stronger place to have a stable relationship with somebody. At the same time, we have to think about how we think about other people. So if we think about other people as we think they have to prove themselves to us first, or we start off being suspicious, that won't help us get into good relationships, because we'll already be putting them off to begin with. And they will have to make the effort to build the relationship. But if we start off assuming the best in people until we're proven wrong otherwise, we assume in effect that they're okay, unless they prove that they aren't okay, then we're much more likely to build strong relationships with them. And what happens is, if you think I'm okay but you're not okay, you're likely to be relationship avoidant, which means you'll steer clear of having intimate relationships. The kind of
what if
person
you're a
who
cretin
moves on
though, and I
quite a
just
bit.
have to have contact with you because I work with you, for instance, you know? I mean, do I go, he's a cretin, but he's okay?
What I do is I look for what's the best I can see in him. Because if I have to work with him, I have two choices. One is to think he's a cretin and loathe it, in which case the relationship won't work and work will be horrible. Or I say, there are certain things he's not very good at, or certain things I don't sympathise with him. He's a great coin collector or stamp collector, and that strikes me as quite boring. And he never speaks, and he's always looking at his sheet of paper. But maybe that's because he's shy or nervous. And actually, if I want to get on with him, I have to find what's good about him. And maybe the fact he has a passion, and he's very thorough and very analytical and likes research, all of which may be important parts of stamp collecting, are attributes that I can actually commend and say, well, that's a good thing, and that's useful to have on the team.
This really does demand, though, a gentility in your nature that either you have or you've got to cultivate, doesn't it? Because I don't know whether you know much about the Irish personality, but we're quite a vicious people.
I'm married to an Irish lady, so I'm learning every day a bit more.
We're quite vicious. We're vicious towards one another, and when we haven't got our neighbour to beat up, we'll beat up ourselves. So this means you really have to shelve that. You've got to become a little bit more. Is neutral the word? Open.
I think open is certainly a good word. And certainly my experience, particularly in married life, to my lovely wife, is that she is very open. There is a tradition of great chat and great banter from the Irish nation, which is beautiful and enjoyable to behold, and full of wise cracks, often at others' expense. But actually the heart remains incredibly warm, I find, in Ireland. And whenever I've visited, I've always been incredibly welcomed. And I think it's that spirit, it's unleashing that warmth, that generosity of mind and that generosity of heart makes us much more likely to have good relationships.
Good word, Octavius. Generosity. That is at the heart of a lot of our problems, a lack of generosity. That we instantly, particularly at this very difficult moment, this impasse that we suddenly find ourselves in with this recession and the world seeming to tumble down around our ears as we speak, we arrive at every engagement with a negative opinion. I believe I'm witnessing that on an increasing level day by day. And that means that you've no generosity of spirit. You're not open. You're not receptive. You're not going to see the positive things. So we really must work on that, I think.
I think that's so right, Gerry. One of the interesting things we found in the research was that if you commit 5 random acts of kindness, which do not involve any money at all, but they're often spontaneous, and they're just doing something small for somebody else, maybe helping someone who's struggling with a bag on the bus, or helping someone across the street, or thinking carefully about your partner and getting them something that they need, either the toast in the morning for breakfast, or remembering to record a program for them they're missing because they're running late from back home from work. If we do 5 things in a day, 5 random acts of kindness in a day, it will make us feel significantly happier. Forget the impact it has on them. Just for us, we'll be much better off. And if we do all 5 in one day rather than 5 spread over a week, we're much more likely to be finding opportunities to be generous, to be kind every day. And that will improve our well-being.
I'm going to take a break, if you can bear with me. It's absolutely vital that we increase the revenue here as quickly and as efficiently as is humanly possible. Back in a moment.
2FM. In this week's RTE Guide, we reveal why Grissom departs CSI with an exclusive interview and your ultimate guide to the new series. Plus, highlights of your favourite programmes to max out your viewing. The RTE Guide. We know TV.
Reasons to be depressed this January. You have no more presents to open. You've no more presents to open and you didn't get what you wanted anyway. You've no more presents you didn't want anyway and your face is blotchy. You're blotchy, no more present opening having face has stuff coming out your nose constantly. Reasons to be cheerful. You can win a VIP trip to New York plus hundreds of other prizes every time you top up your Meteor mobile by €10 or more. Visit topupandwin.ie for more details. Competition runs from the 5th to the 31st of January 2009. One entry for every €10 worth of top up. For full terms, see meteor.ie.
This is the Gerry Ryan Show
on 2FM.
Call 1850 715 922.
I quote, from boardroom to bedroom, this is an invaluable guide to making good relationships great and making bad relationships better. So said Martha Lane Fox, the co-founder of lastminute.com. I've got Octavius Black, the author of The Mind Gym, on the line. Octavius, so we get into a receptive frame of mind, we develop a generosity of spirit, we do things like random acts of kindness, but we must then move forward and now start thinking of the Olympics that is life.
Yes. What do you want to take me a little bit further about the Olympics that is life?
Are you insinuating I'm being a bit vague there? I'm just testing you. All right, if we think of what lies ahead of us, okay, let's see at the moment. We've got this recession, we've got the job losses, we've also got great potential for improvement, for sharpening up our act. We've also got people in our personal lives who need us and don't necessarily need money, but they may need a helping hand. They may need a shoulder to cry on. We have got people who need to be loved. We've got a whole raft of ambitions ahead of us. I want to be healthy. I want to have enough money. I want people to like me. I want to be able to walk out and smile at the rest of the world. And I want, when I get to the end of the day, or the end of my days, to look over my shoulder and go, well, you know what? That wasn't too bad. I did some good, I did some bad, but the general audit is that it went okay. Now that's a lot. There's a lot of challenges down along the way there. And if we are going to go down that road, what do we do next? Do we have to identify everything that's ahead of us and start training for it?
There are 3 mindsets, 3 training muscles, if you like, mental activities that will really help through that Olympics of life. The first is optimism. Now, you don't always want to be optimistic. It's true that optimists live longer, achieve more, are more popular, but they're also wrong more often. So you don't want someone who's about to fly your plane down to Cork going, have I got enough fuel in the plane? Yeah, reckon so.
I'd say
Bad
so.
time for optimism. But equally, as we're going through this economic downturn, there'll be those that go, oh, it's all doom and gloom, it's a disaster, it's the worst recession since the war, and and there'll be others who say, this is a fantastic opportunity. How can I make the most of it? What are the things that I can turn to my advantage? And those are the ones that will succeed, because out of every recession come great people who are very fortunate. And in the interesting research, you talk about people losing their jobs, and it's a terrible, terrible thing to happen, especially if you've been
the
somewhere
ultimate
for a long
self-destruction.
time.
And I believe particularly bad for men who define themselves by little else except their job.
And their football team sometimes.
Yeah.
That is true. Equally, what is fascinating is we've done some research to look at the effects on health and reported distress as a result of either staying in a company after job losses or going and finding another job. And the healthiest people are the ones who leave and find another job. So actually we focus all our attention on those that are going, but relatively little on those that are staying, the survivors, if you like. And they actually need rather more help than we realise. Because there's survivors' envy, there's survivors' guilt, there's the people who let people go, the executioner's remorse. And these are very strong emotions people feel. So I think there's an onus and a responsibility on employers and on all of us to look after those that remain as well as those that are leaving.
Actually, I never thought about that. In companies all over the world, there will be people who will, because of either good fortune, good luck, good planning, or because they're absolutely essential, will be kept. And they are the people who will, without doubt, have their eyes downcast as they watch their colleagues leave the building. And when those people have left the building, will suffer guilt. Why am I still here?
Exactly that. Exactly that. And I actually met someone the other day who said, I can't believe it, I'm desperately trying to get them to get rid of me, and they keep getting rid of everybody else but me. And they had survivor's envy because they were desperate to get out. They hated the environment they were in. They felt the company they had joined had become a shadow of its former self. But they couldn't afford to leave without being paid a little to go.
So you're saying go before this takes you over.
I'm saying
you stand a better chance of surviving mentally anyway.
Yes. I think there is something to be said that if you want to leave, then leave and go and pursue what you want to do, rather than be stuck somewhere that you're loathing and hating and feeling you have to cling on. You talked, Gerry, about looking back on your life and saying, I did all right, I'm quite glad of what I did. Those are the people who moved on, not the ones who stayed somewhere they hated because they felt they had to.
Well, the best thing that I have achieved recently is looking at my life and going, I did some good things, I continue to do some good things, and you know what? I did some bad things as well. And I'm going to try and not do them again. I think that's the most empowering moment.
That's a great moment. It's about forgiveness, both self-forgiveness and indeed when we forgive others. And forgiveness is one of those really universally great things. When we forgive, we feel better. People who are good at forgiving sleep better. They have less likelihood of migraines or heart attacks or anything like that. Forgiveness is generally a good thing to have. Now, of course, there are exceptions when you can't forgive the person because what they've done is dangerous or physically abusive or something like that, and then clearly you wouldn't. But actually, in the vast majority of cases, we forgive too late, and we'd be much better off forgiving a bit earlier, especially of ourselves.
Now, there are some simple little things. I'm just looking at very simple little physical things that you can do, and you suggest in the book, building self-regulation, right? In other words, giving yourself, and this again seems to go back to confidence and giving you a regularity in your life and a purpose, a sense of purpose. Things like sit straight at your desk when you remember to do it. Stop slouching. Now sounds like your Auntie Mary, but actually just try this for one day. Postpone your first cup of coffee or tea by an extra 15 minutes. When you're on a train or a bus, concentrate for 5 minutes on one thing. Keep a record of everything you eat for a week. Sit quietly and do nothing for an hour at lunch or in the evening. This seems like claptrap, but I guarantee, because I tried this, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't end up feeling like Buddha, but I felt a little more like Buddha.
I'm very delighted we got you into a step or two closer to Buddha. That's a grand achievement. I feel I can now look back on my life and decide I've done something worthwhile after all.
Good, my pleasure.
The really fascinating thing about this that we were riveted to discover is that in the vast majority of psychology and mental training, if you apply a skill in one area, it doesn't necessarily go to another. So you may build up your speed and your reaction response in Grand Theft Auto or playing some Xbox game, but what you're not going to do is necessarily, as a result, improve your speed when you're driving the car on the streets. However, with self-regulation, the ability to control your emotions, it is like a muscle. And if you focus it in one area, for example, sitting up straight at your desk whenever you remember, it will make you more able to control your anger when someone gets angry with you or does something that irritates you.
Now, I was giving you just the starter class. As soon as you've gotten through the starter class, then you could go to the intermediate class. Give up something that's bad for you that you enjoy. Caffeine, white sugar, saturated fats, threesomes, or cocaine. No, actually, I just added in those two. Take up something that requires dedication and regular attention. Learning to touch type, working out in a gym. Stop snacking. Change the way you breathe so that your diaphragm rises and falls as opposed to your chest rising and falling. Talk to Bono, he knows all about that. Sit stationary without moving a single muscle for 15 minutes. This will elicit huge change in your disposition.
Absolutely. What it will do is it will mean that next... I was talking to a leader of a business the other day, an IT division, and he said that I was coaching him, and he said that one of the things he had was this American colleague who would take him from 0 to 60 in a moment, and he would just get really, really angry and furious and end up arguing back. And what he lacked was self-regulation, the ability to control his emotions. Now, what we know from really thorough research is that the most successful leaders of businesses, the people who achieve more in their careers, and those who have the most successful relationships are able to control their emotions. They're able to regulate how they feel, not instantly burst off at the moment of anger. Now, the way we can improve this, the way each of us can become better at controlling our emotions, is to do these kinds of exercises. Because if we do them in one bit of our life, we stick to the diet, then we'll end up doing the other bit of our life, remaining calm when our boss shouts at us again.
The advanced phase would involve taking up meditation, spending 30 minutes reflecting on a single word, as an example. Write a daily blog of at least 200 words. Run a marathon. Get out of bed on the first bleep of the alarm clock instead of going, I've got another 1.75 minutes and then I have to get up. Now, these three phases are hugely... I think that this was nearly my favourite part of the whole thing, because you can do this without any phenomenal intellectual capacity or any great change. But the change that you get from doing these things is in fact quite phenomenal. Now, I'm going to take another break and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about maybe something that's a little different, and that is not being afraid to be successful, not being afraid to tell people that you're very good at doing something, not being afraid to say, well, I actually have done that and I succeeded. Because a lot of us, particularly we on these islands, are not good at announcing our success. Our cousins across the pond are brilliant at it.
2FM.
And here's one text. Oh my God, that's the advice I've been looking for. I hate my job, but I feel stuck now. Lots of people have been let go. I feel I should be grateful for having a job, but I really need to pursue what I want to do in life. This is the advice that I've been looking for. Thank you so much. Well, you've changed somebody's day. Octavius Black, the author of The Mind Gym, is in our studio I think you're in London at the moment, Octavius, eh?
I am indeed, Gerry, alas.
Oh, good. Now,
rather be with you.
Thank you. I spoke about we, the Welsh, the Irish, the Scots, the English. We're not very good at saying that we're very good. We call it shyness. I'm not sure whether it is actually shyness, but that's one very simple word to describe it. The Americans are brilliant at saying, no, I'm the guy who could do that. I will do that for you because I've done it 52 times before and it always worked. I am the can-do man. How do we get over that problem?
I think we find a balance between the two, because I don't think we necessarily want to become in that American style of being a Superman or Superwoman about absolutely everything, and we often find that quite grating and it's not always very appealing. Equally, always doing everything down, doing ourselves down, reduces our chances of achieving very much. And often it's remembering that actually people want to know what we're good at. It's not that it's unattractive to them. They'd like to know that we have a skill with, we're good at tennis and we're at a reasonable level, rather than saying I'm a really, really bad tennis player. And then
do you want to play tennis with me?
Yeah. Yeah. Or pretending we're much worse, and then we show them up on the court, and then they feel really embarrassed because they thought they were quite good, but actually we're quite good at it ourselves. So I think it's about being fair about ourselves and fair with other people. And I think also when someone gives us a compliment, we sometimes go, oh, no, you shouldn't have said that, or I'm sure that's not true. We find some excuse for it. Just take it. Say thank you very much. And then move on to the next subject.
A very simple exercise. Just take the compliment. Don't be too shy to say that I have come to fix your washing machine. Oh, well, the last two fellas were... Well, I'm pretty certain I'm going to be able to do it. And apply that to the rest of your day. It'll be quite extraordinary. You don't have to shout and scream about it. And you can apply it to a whole host of situations that you find yourself in. You find yourself in conflict with your partner, and you should be able to say somewhere in the middle of that conversation, or even at the beginning, look, we completely disagree on this. It seems like we're not going to get a solution here. It seems like we're both hurting one another, even having this discussion. But you know something? I think we will, because I can find solutions.
Yes, I think, and together we can find solutions as a way we might want to approach that. And also remember,
did I sound a bit selfish there?
Successful. Sorry,
did I sound a bit selfish? I can find solutions. There was a bit of the me. It's all about me there, wasn't there?
What we find in those situations is better to say, I can get angry quickly. I can be fast in my responses. We together can resolve this and make it that an inclusive piece.
Now, what about, and it's funny because I've been in my sick bed for a few days, and I've been listening to a whole host of other radio programmes, rediscovering programmes that I can't hear because they're on while I'm actually doing this, and listening, of course, to Evelyn O'Rourke, who was presenting the programme here as well, brilliantly as usual. But I was fascinated. I was saying to myself, why do I like listening to him and I don't like listening to him? And in one case, it was because the other him just never shut up and never let the person speak. They didn't listen.
Listening is the 101 of good relationships. If you're not good at listening, you will not be good at having relationships. Now, listening happens at a number of different levels. And so we have the kind of open listening where we're actually hearing what people are saying, which sounds like your person wasn't even doing that. They're actually attentive, picking up the facts. But then we have different filters of listening that we can use, which are based on how we interpret what's coming to us. So you have the critical listener. So if someone's trying to sell you something, you probably want to be the critical listener. What are they not telling me? What are the facts that they're missing out here? Then we have the problem-solving listener. So your partner comes back and says, I had a terrible day at work. And you go, I wonder if you could reorganize your work, or I wonder what you could do about this, and perhaps you should try a new report and so forth. But actually what you want to that stage is just an empathetic listener. I feel really sorry for you there. That sounds a bit of a nightmare. And therefore what we need to be good at is being agile in choosing the right listening filter.
And that's not faking it. That it would seem to me by your description is in fact facilitating the other person, helping them. It's not faking it.
Not at all. It's being very, very genuine, because we genuinely use all of those filters at different times in any case. What happens is we tend not to be very conscious or aware of which ones we're using or why we're using them. So sometimes we're listening and we get a very positive reaction, and sometimes we're listening and we get a far from positive reaction. And the other person says, why don't you listen to me? You go, but I am listening to you. And the reason why we're having this argument about whether we're listening or not is because of the filter that we're using. So it's often good to start off with the empathetic filter, for example, or the unconditional listening before we go to the problem solving. So generous listening, empathetic listening first, critical listening, problem-solving listening usually later.
I like the idea of creating these filters, and you suggest writing down what has happened in your conversation, in your previous conversation, and trying to identify the moment where the red button was pressed and where you suddenly went, that's so friggin' typical of you. I mean, that's your default position every single time. We discussed this. You go there. There's no point in speaking to you. And you've lost your temper. You've lost, the discussion is gone. The debate is over, and you really need to have a filter to stop you going there.
Absolutely. But that's part of the self-regulation we were talking about earlier. It's partly about having the good listening. If that does happen, what you're doing there is you're doing something called flooding. which is where your physical reactions are overtaking your whole body. At this stage, you cannot listen. You will not pick up anything at all, and you will not be able to have a constructive conversation. And the only thing to do when you get to flooding is to disappear and say, I need to take a walk, I need to take a break. And your body will require about 20 minutes to calm down before you're in any fit state to return to that. So be really aware if that happens, get out rather than try and solve it then and there.
I'm going to bring in a listener here. Stephen, good morning to you.
Morning, Mr. Ryan.
Welcome. Say hello to Octavius.
Good morning, Octavius, and how are you?
Very well, Stephen. How are you today?
I couldn't be better. Well, maybe with a bit of your help, it might be.
Okay, Stephen, you've taken up a new position.
Yeah, about 6 months ago, Gerry, I got a job, actually business development. And now for years I was a barman tipping along and with bigger dreams, basically. So I seen an advertisement in the paper. I applied for a position in business development. I found out a little bit more about it. I was very successful in the interview. And surprise, surprise, I got the position. And right from the get-go, I really, really enjoyed the job. But it's obviously partly very stressful. But I've noticed lately that I seem to be lacking confidence to take it further. I've noticed myself putting off meetings and putting off the eventuality of meeting people, and I just seem to be suffering from a severe lack of confidence and a lack of belief that I can do the job. I'm actually doubting my belief to do things I've already done in the job, and I just feel like I'm personally falling back. I'm having difficulty in speaking with people. I'm having difficulty in projecting myself in the way that I know I can. And it's hampering my ability to... I just feel now it's getting to the stage where it's hampering my ability to do the job, and I would certainly not like to get into a position where I could actually lose the job.
Stephen, do you know when this started?
I haven't got a particular date. I would say in the last 2 to 3 months I've noticed this feeling in my ear.
And how long have you been doing the job?
I've been doing the job for 6 months now.
So the first 3 or 4 months went pretty well.
Yes.
And you had good meetings with people, and you had good results.
Yes.
And then something happened that caused you to feel less confident about things.
Well, I'm assuming there was an event, but I can't actually seem to pinpoint anything that's particularly happened. It's for some reason, I've been told by people at work that I'm doing a good job. I've been told that the results I have got are satisfactory and more. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, I just have an unbelievable doubt in my own abilities to continue doing what I am doing and to further myself as well.
Have you had any good meetings this week?
No, not particularly. I'm not getting the results I know I can.
Okay. Well, I think what's happened here, something has happened that has caused you to lose your confidence. Now, it may be an overheard comment from a colleague. It may have been a meeting or two that didn't go quite as well as you were expecting. It may be that you made great progress in the first few months and you felt that you would carry on making progress at that rate. But actually, there's going to be a time when it starts to tail off. So the first thing is it's great news that your colleagues think you're doing well and that the outsiders are on board with you. So that's something to draw enormous confidence from. The second thing is that you've done a good job. And that means that you can do it again. So what I would think about is taking it one stage at a time, one meeting at a time, and thinking about in advance, what do I want to do in this meeting? What do I want to get out of it? What's a realistic expectation? And then tackling just that meeting by itself.
So slowing down and stage by stage.
Stage by stage. So have you got another meeting this week or next week?
Yes, I do. I have more meetings today, in fact.
So what do you want to get out of that meeting?
Today's meeting, just an agreement on continued business. Mm-hmm. With the recessionary factors involved, the client of the company.
All right, just stop there for a second, Stephen.
Yeah,
is that the definition of what success in this meeting today would be? An agreement to continue the business?
Yeah, just an agreement.
Octavius, would it be correct to say that he should just leave it at that, go to the meeting, see if he's continued the business, and then sit back and go, I made it. I did it. I have succeeded.
There's a lot to be said for that. Because I don't know about you, Stephen, but I know others who go with the intention of getting repeat business. They get the repeat business. They go, oh, but I should have sold them more. I should have increased it. I let myself down. I could have got more out of them.
Identify the goal.
That's an exact factor of how I've been feeling. There's always something extra I could have gotten.
Identify the goal.
Enough.
And properly identified. Now, we're in the final hurdle, or about approaching the final hurdle. we can't get through all of the book and also defeat the purpose of going out and buying it and enjoying it, because you will enjoy it. You know, you'll go through the usual thing that I always go through with a book of this nature. I go, bullshit, this is all complete claptrap. And then I go, that's interesting. Oh, there's another thing that's interesting. And then before you know it, your pants are still down around your ankles. You haven't finished on the toilet and you've read half the book. Actually, I think the toilet is a great place for this kind of exercise. If there was one thing that you could say to people and leave them with today in terms of getting to 5 o'clock this evening with a sense of purpose and hope, what would that be?
One thing I would certainly suggest as a sense of building great relationships is to give praise. It's one of the undervalued pieces in our lexicon, and we often fail to do it. I was talking to someone the other day. She was saying, my husband used to tell me how beautiful I was and how lovely I was and stylish I was. He hasn't done anything like that for ages. I think he's falling out of love with me. Yeah. And I said, oh my gosh. I said, well, that's interesting. When was the last time that you praised him? And she looked at me slightly peculiar and went, I don't know. I said, well, why don't you try it and see what happens? So she went away, and I saw her again the next week, and she said, you know what, darn you, it worked. She said, I've been praising him for the good things he does and forgetting to criticize him for the bad things, and he started praising me again, and we're back on track, and it's a lovely feeling.
Do you know something? So you're completely right. You're so completely right. It's absolutely, it must be one of the most fundamentally assured things that if you are generous in your praise, that you will receive back praise as well. It's also, it feels good to do it, but you will receive back validation yourself as well.
You will indeed. It's a mutually reinforcing cycle. So if we start praising our colleagues at work, it will come back. Not immediately, not now, not necessarily today before 5 o'clock, but we'll start to create an environment where people start to feel appreciated. Their chests will be a little bit higher, they'll stand a little bit taller, and they'll feel happy about things. And then they'll start being nice back to us, and then we'll feel pretty good about that too. So it's a really good ingredient to put into any relationship you're in at the moment.
Do you know something, Octavius? I think this could be the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Good morning.
Gerry, good morning to you. Thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Good morning to you too. Good morning. That's Octavius Black, the author of The Mind Gym. Now, I have read literally hundreds of books, self-help books, psychology books, books designed to give you a sense of purpose or explain your lack of it. This is one of the most practical of all books that deal with the way that we approach life, how we relate to other people, how we relate to the world around us that I've ever read. It's pretty close to the best that I've read of all of these books. And very readable too. You can dip in and out of it, which I think is always an absolute essential ingredient when you're dealing with this. And it will help. You know, when I was younger, certainly I was a lot more cynical about taking this kind of approach to life. Try to train yourself so that you operated more efficiently in terms of the way that you related to your job, your colleagues, your family, your nearest and dearest, and those who could be classed as your opponents or your enemies even. I felt that you were better off kind of being spontaneous and dealing with everything as it came along. I now actually don't believe that. I believe that you can prepare and you can train for life, and you can receive back very positive results by taking what seem like mechanical steps. And those steps may seem initially mechanical when you read them in a book like this, but I guarantee, just take one chapter and try and follow some of the suggestions in it, and I'd be absolutely amazed if you didn't get a result or even a sense of something positive happening to you. For instance, at this very moment in time, I feel compelled to say to all of you listening how much I value you and the fact that you chose to listen to this radio program this morning. Because what does that mean? It means, first of all, I feel good about it. I like the idea that you've chosen to listen to what the people on this show have to say to you, what I think about something. Makes me feel like I've got some purpose or worth. You have given me a fantastic opportunity in life to do things I could never have dreamt of doing when I was younger. You maintain my family. You give me hope, future. You make my ambitions seem real. And it's a really good place to be. And I wouldn't be here except for you.